probably was a result of a young boy who committed suicide here in Wisconsin.
Welcome to Wisconsin in Words. It's a Wisconsinized series. We interview authors who've written books. Today we're interviewing Bridget Birdsall. She wrote Double Exposure. And Bridget, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Steve.
Well, before we talk about the book, can we talk about you a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Here's what I know from reading the book, and I'm just, you grew up in the Milwaukee area.
Yes.
Played basketball for Brookfield Central. Graduated from Brookfield Central.
Yes, yes, sir.
Basketball scholarship to Creighton University in Omaha, which is a Division I school.
Yes, it is.
And assume you graduated there. Did you play all 4 years there?
I did. No, I did graduate, but I did not play all 4 years. After my first freshman year, I blew out my knee.
Oh, you did?
My left knee. Yeah, I tore an interior cruciate ligament.
Okay.
So I decided I wanted to keep my knees. So.
Well, that's all I know from reading the book. Kind of fill in the blanks. How did you tell us? You went back to school to get a degree in writing?
Yes, I'm a dyslexic writer, so that's unusual, but there are a few of us out there. And I didn't ever plan, really, to go back to school at all. I didn't even think I could do graduate school just because of my other ability. But I was with a writing group, and a fellow writer from here in Madison said to me, "You should check out Vermont College. It's a low residency program," because I was a mom at the time, and I had a job, and I could fly out there every 6 months and do these 10-day intensives for 2.5 years and end up with my master's in fine arts in writing for children and young adults, which I decided to do.
And this, Double Exposure, is your second book.
Yes, it is.
And tell us a little bit about your first one before we focus. We will get to Double Exposure,
okay.
I promise.
Ordinary Angels was my first book, and my son had been watching me write for about 20 years and said, "Mom, you promised you were going to publish a book." I'm giving away my age. "By the time you turn 50. And I had all these near misses. I had a 2-book contract with Front Street Press out of North Carolina, and they closed their doors. I had an editor I work with at Flower Strauss and Giroux, and he ended up losing his position there. I was actually on the plane to New York when I found out. And so all these things kept happening. As everybody knows, the publishing industry is in tumult. You know, there's all this that's been happening.
E-books are replacing, although this is available on e-book.
Right. And then people started independently publishing. So I decided I was going to pick one of my books and just publish it before my 50th year was over. And that's what I did. So Ordinary Angels is actually a fictionalized story of my life.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's autobiographical, and it's about siblings surviving the death of a sibling. It's for young adults, but it's also for all, older. It's also many adults have appreciated the book. So, but I like to tackle topics that I guess other authors shun away from.
Well, now, okay, which is a perfect segue into Double Exposure.
Yes.
You frame it this way. Let's talk about Double Exposure. You have a 15-year-old heroine, Alex.
Alex, yep.
And she is what you have called both on your website and elsewhere an intersex individual.
Yes.
Can you talk about that term?
Yes. Well, intersex is more of a word we use to describe people who do not necessarily present when they are born as male or female. Or they may present as male or female, but they may internally have an extra X chromosome, an extra Y chromosome, but they're really kind of a hybrid gender, to describe it in the best way I can. They've been with us since the beginning of time. Different words have been used to describe people who are intersex, but the medical field tends to use the word intersex. And it used to be where they would take children who were born with ambiguous genitalia or unable to identify, and they would automatically make them into girls thinking their lives would be easier. But there have been actual cases where that didn't create a very good life situation for the individuals, because they would start developing other ways in their teen years especially.
Right.
And sometimes we don't even know when a child's intersex. Sometimes you don't know until they're in their teen years. So right now, the medical industry is really catching up with this. About 2% of the children born in the United States are considered in that intersex spectrum.
Okay.
And now hospitals have gender teams that go in, and the movement has been, especially through the Intersex Society of North America, to not label kids right away with their gender, and to wait and let them have a choice, and maybe see what develops too, because people develop in different ways at different times in their lives.
It's intriguing because your heroine, Alex, after being severely bullied in California, within a few pages of the book, you move her to Cudahy High School in Cudahy, Wisconsin.
Yes.
And did you pick this setting because you went to Brookfield Central, but did you grow up on the south side of Milwaukee?
No, I didn't grow up on the south side of Milwaukee, but I have a special place in my heart for Milwaukee, and I really felt like the south side of the Milwaukee, it's a very unique place. As you drive along the viaduct to the expressway, you can look over the south side of Milwaukee and see over 200 church steeples.
Yes.
And in the early 1900s, many, many different groups of immigrants came to the south side of Milwaukee. So it was a melting pot of cultures and perspectives and faith-based religions, different people from all over. And I also wanted Alex to be from a place that was working class. Her uncle Grizzly works at Oscar Mayer, and
the tattooed heavy Uncle Grizzly. Well,
yeah,
we'll talk about him in a minute.
So I wanted a quintessential Milwaukee experience, because I also know that Milwaukee is also one of the most racially divided cities in the country.
Well, you say on page, let me find it, I think it's on page, page 6, Milwaukee, oh, here it is, page 211. Milwaukee isn't the most accepting place on the planet.
Right. Right. So that's...
Is that you using the omniscient, this is a fiction book.
Right. And it's the narrator using that term, because it's really true. There's been a history in Milwaukee of not being able to accept other groups, and yet all the groups are there. And so, and to this day, I think there's still need for melding and bringing together differences, whatever they may be,
right.
Race, religion,
yes.
Sexual identity, gender, whatever.
It intrigues me because the whole book takes place in one basketball season. Alex and her mother moved to the Cudahy School District, south side of Milwaukee.
Right.
She plugs into the high school, the women's basketball team,
right.
as a sophomore.
As a sophomore.
She's very good. You were at times pretty good player at Brookfield Central. Was basketball your first sports love?
It was my first love, yes. Okay. Basketball was my first love.
And it's Alex's.
For sure, and it's Alex's too. And there's a comment she makes, when she's playing basketball, it doesn't even, nothing else matters. She just feels at one with the ball. And I remember having that feeling too, When I was young, I also often was identified as a boy. I had a kind of an androgynous body, and they would often think I was a boy, and so I related to Alex's experience.
Well, you say on your website, my own experience of not quite fitting into cultural and social gender boxes.
Yes,
so
yes.
That's the experiences that you were referring to?
Right, and it started very early. My mom would tell me stories about trying to put me in a dress. And I was 2 years old, and she said, well, you threw this tantrum, and you screamed and threw yourself on the floor. And I said, why won't you wear this dress? And I said, because I'm me. And here I was, 2 years old. I already knew what I wanted and didn't want. who I was.
I have to ask you this question. It's the book has already won an award for anti-bullying, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's made a list from Publishers Weekly of the top books published in 2014
Right.
that deal with bullying. But it's the only one that deals with an intersex individual.
Right, and that's my next question. Is the book anti-bullying, or is it about a teen's difficult choice of sexual sexual identity when you are intersex and have the genitals of both male and female?
Well, you know, that's a great question, Steve. And you know what? They play together because almost everybody who deals with those issues deals with bullying. I mean, it's a reality in our world today, you know, and people who are different are just so much more likely to experience bullying, exclusion, intolerance, you know, shaming, shunning, all those things that can happen in a society when people are different.
Can we talk about bullying? How do you define it? And you say at one point that you were a counselor and you heard the bullying terms, the two most common bullying terms, were gay and fat.
Right.
How do you define bullying?
Well, I define bullying as a misuse of power. When an individual, that would be a bully, or a group of individuals, that would be considered mobbing. It's not a term we use a lot in the United States. It's used in Europe and Canada and other places where they understand that dynamic. But it's when an individual or group of people overpower and try to manipulate a situation or overpower somebody in an abusive way, you know, to gain power.
And you say that this, well, you said in your op-ed piece in the journal Sentinel that words can over time convince someone that they are, quote, unworthy of life, and it can lead to suicide, and
Yes.
it can be lethal.
Yes. As a writer, you know, I believe words are so important to us. You know, we're not always conscious of how important these words are. But, you know, for example, if you go to your locker every day and somebody has written, "You are so gay," or your lunchbox, they've written it on that, or they pass notes, or they make fun of you for being overweight, or whatever it is, eventually that starts to just wear you down because you start to feel bad about yourself. And that's what my experience is. I wrote a piece called "If Sticks and Stones Can Break Your Bones, But Words Can Actually Kill You." And you know, when I would hear that stuff, I wasn't a counselor, I was the director of a community center that housed a K-8 schools. Yes. There were over 200 kids there. And when I would hear that out in the hall, a lot of times I'd think, well, it's just words. Well, my perspective has really changed on that since I have a nephew who, you know, was bullied with words. You know, faggot scrawled across the driveway, and you know, just over and over. And now we have, you know, social media where it can be very subtle, you know, some of this stuff that happens to people. It might not be as dramatic as having a slur, you know, painted on your house or on your driveway. It could be something very subtle, you know.
Well, so Alex loves basketball. She
Yes.
tries out for basketball.
Yes.
She's very good at basketball, as
Yes.
you were once. But she has, before they moved from California to south side of Milwaukee, she has a screaming match with her mother on page 11. Her mother says, "I know you're different."
Yeah.
And Alex responds, "Neither, both, I know, intersex, eunuch, hermaphrodite, ambiguous genitalia, one of the 2% of 21 mutant genderless baby strains born every year, and none of that matters, because you know what, Mom? I still need to pick a goddamn locker room. That's why I want to be dead." I use this quote because your book captures all the angst and trauma of all the hormones and other emotional decisions of being a teenager.
Right.
So how important was that? And how come you were so good at capturing all the teenage angst
Oh, I'm sure I still have some in my inner teenager, too.
All right.
But, you know, and I raised a boy, and I've been around teens many times. In fact, this spring I'll be teaching at Edgewood High School in the Young Playwrights program with high school seniors. So I like to be around young people. I love their energy. And as most of us can remember, at that time in our life, everything seems so huge, you know, and we're really just figuring out who we are and what we want to be in the world. When my son was graduating from high school, everybody had, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? You know, and we kind of expect young people to know all that stuff. And they don't. They don't. Their brains aren't even fully developed till they're 25 years old, okay?
Right.
You know, I mean, so it's like, how can we know who we are? And we're just figuring it out. And we're more fragile. We're more emotional. Our hormones are going crazy. We're growing at an incredible rate.
And somebody looked at me wrong. Well, at one point, Alex in her first game scores her first points, but it's for the opposing team.
Right.
And
that actually happened to me.
Oh, it did it?
Yes.
Who were you playing?
I don't even remember. I think it was Cedarburg. Actually.
And so when Alex comes back to the bench,
yeah,
and
she's
says,
horrified.
I just want to die.
I just want to die.
Did you at that moment?
Oh yeah. That's why I really related to that, you know, because I was just like, that was like one of the most horrifying, embarrassing moments of my entire life, because I'm so excited. I go score the basket for the wrong team. And it's really funny you brought that up, because my writer group said, well, I can't believe if she's so good at basketball that she could score for the wrong team. But in the thrill of the game and the moment, you know, yes. It was my first game. And it was just like, whoa, you're just going for it on automatic pilot.
Well, since you scored the first basket for the wrong, since you scored a basket for the wrong team, double exposure include a lot of other of your personal experiences? Well,
you know, it does. It does. I am not an intersex individual, but I really relate to what people who have, and I know people who have this condition, and I have friends who have. I have a friend who has a child who has this condition, so I know about this. So yes, I'm sure that all of my characters have a part of me and my life in them. It's what I draw from.
Well, now let's talk about some characters. Okay. So we should get back to the plot line. It's set in one basketball season. She's playing for Cudahy. They play in gyms like Washington, right? Yeah. Washington High School?
Yeah, Washington High School.
Did you play in the Cudahy High School gym?
No, I never
played
played
in the
Cudahy.
Washington.
I didn't. No,
okay.
I didn't.
Okay. But now let's talk about the bully. The chief bully on the team is Pepper.
Right.
Did you have Peppers in your life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had Peppers in my life for sure.
Because Pepper made Alex's life miserable both on the field and off.
Right.
When she turns her in, spoiler alert, when she turns her into the WIAA.
Right, exactly.
As someone who may be a male playing on a female team.
And, you know, most people I know have a Pepper in their life. You know, I bet you have a bully you can remember in your life, you know. So most people have somebody at some time where they've experienced that feeling. And a lot of us have been on the other side. We've also been the bully at times. So none of us, I mean, we're all culpable in this bullying situation, whether it's we don't speak up, whether it's us intentionally, they say, or even unintentionally causing harm to another human being, or whether we're the one being targeted. I mean, it's a complex situation. But yes, I've had Pepper Pitmanis in my life before, even into my adult life.
And teammates Rosalind was always there.
Rosalind was always there for her.
And MJ was an African-American player.
Yes.
And you had Rosalind's and MJ's in your life?
Yes, I did.
And did you have a Coach Chance in your life?
Yes, I did.
At high school or at Creighton?
At high school.
Okay.
Yeah. And his name was Blomberg, and Mr. Blomberg, Coach Blomberg, and he had previously coached, or he was somehow involved with the Milwaukee Bucks for years, and I can't remember what he did.
And now let's go to Uncle Grizzly, who you say well, you tell us about Uncle Grizzly. He's this bear of a man, tattooed, yet he is tenderhearted and supportive.
He has the number one fat boy, exclamation mark, on his knuckles.
Right, he's just fierce looking.
He's a fierce looking, Harley driving big teddy bear.
But he's supportive
with
of
Rasta
his niece.
hair. He is totally supportive of her, and he is one of the key people in the book because he is the message of self-acceptance. He's been there. He knows what Alex is going through, and he knows what it's like to have to fight for who you are, to accept yourself, you know, and he's definitely experienced that in his life. And so he's like, you know, this is what it is, Alex. You know, it's you who has to love you. You have to accept yourself, you know, and you're going to have to face this. You can't run away from who you are.
Okay. Well, it's pretty amazing to me. They go undefeated in Coach Chance's last season. Right?
Yes.
This is a real spoiler alert, but maybe people will buy the book anyway. And then they
buy the book anyway. That's right.
Lo and behold, they go up and win the state championship.
Yes.
Which is a huge thing. And here's my question. Most people in life don't win the state championship. I was prepared at the end of the book for them to finish second. And that last minute layup that wins it misses. Why did you have them win the state championship?
That layup had to make it.
Why? I went the other way. They're going to come in second, but Alex is reconciled with Pepper and the rest of the team, and it's the moral of the story is we all can't hit the winning layup. So
NCAA championship, Marquette University, Jerome Whitehead, under the basket with McGuire coaching, right?
Yeah.
3 seconds left on the board. They pass in the ball. It goes full court to Jerome Whitehead. 3, 2, Jerome pumps it in.
You got it.
Yep.
Have you ever coached?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, okay. It sounds like it. It sounds like it.
So, you know, yes, this is a Wisconsin tradition in the honor of Al McGuire and my good friend Rick Majerus. I had to make that basket.
All right. Okay. You have made the point. So I want to make a few others. Number one, we referred to you. This is a fiction book. You're using the author as the omniscient voice. So let's pull 2 quotes. Number one. Alex is talking to her doctor in California.
Right.
Dr. Royce's words rush into my head. We all have a right and an obligation to be who we are. A person's your enemy, Alex, only if you give them power. Stand up, look them in the eyes, refuse to carry any shame. Truth is the mightiest sword. Is this you imparting life lessons on the readers of Double Exposure?
Yeah, I think it is without it being too pedantic. You know, it's a way to have a character share that wisdom and have Alex really hear it, because people who are different need our support. They need our wisdom, especially young people. They need to know we've been there. We know what they're going through, and we understand, and there is a way out. I think that's what people need to know. You know, that we survived, they can too. You know, especially people who have been through these hard times. It's just like when you have experienced healing in your life, then you go on to help others become healed, you know?
Okay. That was on page 211, 237. Alex is looking where someone had scrawled graffiti on the back of a bus seat.
Right.
She says, then I stare at the word queer on the seat in front of me. Aren't we all queer? Different? Odd? Peculiar? Strange? Freaky? Weird? Losers in our own way? This seems to be you practicing some life lessons there.
Right, right. And it's really true, you know. Don't we all have a little bit of oddness in all of us? Aren't we all queer? Aren't we all different? There's something odd about all of us because, you know what? There's no one on the entire planet exactly like you. You know, you were brought here, and I believe it's you were divinely created to bring something to this great puzzle called humanity, that you have these gifts to share that no one else on the entire planet has. And that's what each of us has to bring. And that's why diversity and difference is such a gift. It's not It's to me, it's God's diversity. It's our Creator's diversity. And who are we to say that that is wrong or that's a sin or whatever however we might judge another human being?
Thank you. In your op-ed piece in the journal Sentinel, you disagree with the traditional advice, and I'm going to quote your op-ed piece in last week's journal Sentinel. Often books on bullying encourage young people to tell someone in authority about what is going on. You disagree with that. Why?
That sometimes can be a very dangerous way to go. From my talking to young people who have been bullied, and my experience of it is often, and some schools will come right out and say we can't protect these children. You know, they'll tell the parents we can't guarantee their protection, which you can understand, you know, but in another way, we are our brother's keeper. We are our sister's keepers, you know. And as authorities in school systems, I think a lot of our systems are taxed. They're doing the best they can with a large number of students. A lot of teachers don't want to take on the problem themselves. I've heard teachers say, hit them back. What are you doing to cause the problem? And just ignore them. Well, those are things that they don't work. And it takes so much courage for a young person to come forward and say, you know, I'm being bullied. Most kids are reticent to go to authorities. And what I'm saying to young people is go to authority or talk to people, but make sure you're finding the person who will really help you. You know, and if you go to somebody in the school and they're obviously not going to help you, you go to somebody else. Some of these kids can't even go to their parents because some of it's happening at home too. So you just have to keep finding the way to the person who will listen, and there will be a person who will listen. But keep talking about it, don't isolate, and keep finding the way, but just know that some people might have good intentions but not be able to handle it.
A follow-up. Your fictional book was set one semester or half a school year at Cudahy High School.
Yes.
I went to the Cudahy High School website yesterday,
right,
and they have a form, which you have in front of you, to report
yes,
bullying and conflict. Just quickly, conflict is characterized, first of all, they differentiate.
Yes.
Conflict should be reported to the building administrator. Conflict is characterized by the fact that it generally happens in the heat of the moment, often a difference of opinion, and most of the time both parties involved are equally upset. But now, would you read the definition of bullying and tell me whether you agree with it?
Okay. Bullying is more of a deliberate act, and there is the intention to hurt, insult, or threaten the other person. In the case of bullying, there's a definite power imbalance where the bully seeks to manipulate the situation so that the target has no power. This makes it very difficult for the student being bullied. They want to see the bullying stopped. However, often there is no willingness on the bully's side to change. Bullying is usually a repeated activity. However, it can be a one-time incident. Life can often become worse for the target as the bullying continues.
As someone who has written about bullying and who speaks about bullying, is it progress for the Cudahy High School to have this report form on its website?
Definitely.
Do you agree with this definition?
Yes,
of
I
bullying?
do agree with this definition.
Okay.
Yes, I do. And I think what's important here is it says it's usually a repeated activity, but it can also be a one-time incident, because a lot of places that define bullying will say that it happens over time. That's not necessarily true. If we were to do it in a nutshell, bullying is the misuse of power.
Okay. Wrapping up here, is Wisconsin making progress in terms of dealing with LGBT issues? Same-sex marriage was legalized this year.
Right.
The Baraboo School District just adopted a policy for transgender students, allowing them, if they're athletes, to decide which locker room.
Correct.
Are we making progress, Bridget?
Yeah, I definitely think we're making progress, and I think the awareness is really it's coming into the light, so people are understanding that, you know, we live in this multi-dimensional world, and we're multi-dimensional beings. We're all different. We're different, and we have different ways we want to walk in the world, different ways of who we are. And you know, in the book too, it talks about, we've known about people who are intersex from the beginning of time, and in indigenous tribes, you know, where they would have these children born, they were revered as people who walked in both worlds. They considered they walked in the male world and the female world. They were considered two-spirited.
You say in some cultures she would be considered a shaman.
Exactly. She
a spiritual leader.
Right. She would be raised as a spiritual leader. And so it's really a misnomer to think that there is, even in the Olympics we're finding this, that there's an exact definition of male or female. Is that more of what a person feels they are? Is that more of what's in their soul? Or is that a physical makeup? No, we know that now. You know, it's not necessarily a perfect, there's no two people who are exactly alike, and there's a lot more variation than we want to admit. You know?
Wrapping this up, who should read Double Exposure, Bridget?
Oh, anybody, every young adult in the country should read this book. It's a game-changing book, and it should be in every single middle school, high school library, every young adult contemporary collection in every bookstore across the country. And it is if you ask for it. So go to your bookstores, ask them to order the book, ask your librarians to order the book. Many Newbery Award winners have read it already and really plugged it on the back. It's a fabulous story. It's told in a way that's digestible for all young people. And interestingly enough, about 60% of young adult readers are women in middle-aged women. So that could be the librarians, the teachers, but anybody who knows a young person in their life should read this book.
When the Baraboo School District adopted its transgender policy, there were those that were critical of it. Is the book getting any pushback, criticism?
The book is not. The book has not gotten pushback yet, but it's just starting to come out. It was just published in November 1st, so it's starting to find its way into the world. I have no doubt there may be some people out there who still think that, you know, that God maybe punished Alex by making her that way, or whatever. But we'll see. I mean, my hope is that Alex will be a champ, as she is in the book. She'll be a champ, and she'll live in the hearts of all the young people who read her. And
plans for a third book?
Yes, I have another book I'm working on right now. It's a cowgirl novel set in Wyoming's Bighorn Mountains.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Bridget Birdsall of Madison is an author who just wrote Double Exposure. This has been Wisconsin Eye Series, Wisconsin in Words. Bridget, thanks for visiting Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks.